Today we're going to be the consumer financial. Hi, my name is Alan. Today we're going to be talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB. So some of you may have a difficult time talking about money and just discussing it with your colleagues or your friends. Right? There's a lot of confusing things when it comes to money about the financial sector that may apply to you, but you just don't know where to look or where to get answers. But don't worry, that's why in 2011, the government created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. So the goal of the CFPB is to protect consumers from the financial sector, such as loans, banks, mortgages, credit cards, and so on. Right? The goal was to make sure that consumers were well educated about the financial decisions that they were making and they knew what they were doing. Now, this is important because it's a response to the 2008 financial crisis, where a lot of families actually took out loans that they could not actually afford. Right? Even though mortgage companies had predatory practices, families were unaware, right? They were not educated and they just took out loans when they couldn't actually afford to pay for them. And as a result, a lot of loans were defaulted, which caused the crisis, right? It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it, right? People have to be responsible when it comes to taking out those loans, and sometimes people just don't know, depending on what their financial background was. Now, the CFPB actually has a lot of interesting tools and data on the site, but I'm not going to go for everything just because, if you're curious, you can explore yourself, but I want to give you a high-level idea about what it offers. CFPB actually writes articles about various financial topics that are probably applicable to you, and they might even help you really understand what these financial products are and navigate them. For example, a good one is credit cards. The topic of credit cards is very complicated. I've had many students in high school and in college who don't have a credit card, right? And their parents never talk to them about credit cards and they have no idea how to approach that topic. So they're almost a little bit afraid to approach the topic of credit cards just because they don't know what it is. They've always been taught that debt was bad, but that's not always true for credit cards. It's all about educating yourself and making sure that you make the right financial decisions. And the CFPB actually offers a whole set of tools for that, right? The first thing we can look at is terms, right? There's so many terms for credit cards, but it's broken down in this sort of like glossary. You can see what they mean, and hopefully you get a better idea about what all these terms on the contract for applying for a credit card mean. Another great thing that comes up a lot is credit cards usually have a bunch of common issues associated with it. People usually have a bunch of issues that are pretty straightforward that comes up, but you may not know the answer to it. For example, what if your credit card limit was too low? Right? How do you approach that topic? Or how do you make sure that you don't use too much of your credit limit, and how much is too much? Right? So all of these will be answered by these articles. Another great area that is discussed about is savings. Right? We all talk about savings. Americans are, some would say, notoriously bad at saving, right? They spend the money that comes in and they basically don't know how to save for the future. I would say a good chunk of Americans have that issue due to a mix of problems, right? There's not a single thing that indicates that, hey, if we fix this one thing, everyone is not going to have saving issues. Two topics that are related to savings that are really important is emergency funds. Right? Everyone should have an emergency fund, and if you don't have one or you don't know what it is, I strongly encourage you to check it out on the site. Another thing is about opening a bank account. If you just turned 18, have no idea about bank accounts, and you really want to figure out what's my best approach to opening a bank account without falling for tricks from the bank to open up more than I need or to pay additional fees, check out opening a bank account. Right? Maybe you'll learn a thing or two before you go into a branch to talk to a representative. So a lot of us have difficulty organizing, right? Getting an idea about where our information is, and you can check out these nice worksheets that will practically help you budget, right? Help you save. You can just work your way through it, and you'll learn some hard truths about how much money you're spending where and how to save, right? Or if you can't save, maybe the answer is really you need a better paying job. Right? So a lot of these are help you recognize and organize your financials. All of these sheets are free, right? You're not paying for anything. You don't have to pay for a financial advisor. You just have to be willing to put in the work and fill in these sheets yourself. Now, here's a big one that comes up a lot, and there's a lot of shame associated with it. And it's important to recognize that, hey, it's not the end of the world, and there's a place to start, right? And that's related to fraud and scams. People fall for fraud and scams all the time. I don't want to say it's common, but there is an entire industry around it. It's easy to victimize someone and to blame them. Hey, you should have been smarter, you should have known, but who knows? It could happen to anyone, and it's important that we have resources available to assist and help out when it does occur or prevent it. Sometimes a scam is obvious, but that's not always the case, right? There's so many different types of scams, and some of them are so complicated, you don't even know if it's a scam that's occurring. So be sure to check out common scams that occur and just protect yourself in case you ever encounter that issue. Since there's so much shame associated with scams and fraud, you don't really want to tell anyone, right? You don't want to tell your friends and family. What if they think less of you? If that's your situation, to consider looking on CFPB. They do provide tools and basically next steps, right? How-to guides to get out of scams and frauds and to figure out what are my next steps. And the goal is to recover from a scam and fraud. Sometimes you might be out of luck, but hey, at least you can take the next steps to protect yourself. Now, the last article of great importance, in my opinion, is the coronavirus or current events articles. As you know, the coronavirus has impacted us greatly, especially from a financial perspective, and the government has provided a lot of relief in many ways, right? Maybe in more ways than you would think. And this is a great way to find out, hey, what benefits am I missing out on that the government has provided, and maybe I'm just not looking into. So here you'll find out a bunch of information about the pandemic, about financial information related to the pandemic, what laws were passed that you can possibly utilize to protect yourself financially. The CFPB is a great place to check out articles and personal finance and just information about how to prepare and really get an idea about where you're going with your financial life. The next thing I want to talk about is tools. Right? CFPB, like any great personal finance site, provides you with a bunch of tools that you can play around with. So I have a lot of favorites when it comes to CFPB tools because a visual or graphic will help you understand where you're going with your financial picture. And one of the best ones that I've used recently, just because I purchased a condo, was the interest rate tool. Basically, you can figure out what is considered a normal interest rate in your area based on your credit score, your own financial picture, and also maybe the place you're buying. All right, so you'll get a good idea about, hey, is my lender offering me a competitive interest rate? The next tool is actually for students. Financial planning for students can be daunting because it's probably the first time you're doing financial planning of any kind, especially if you come from a household that doesn't really prepare you for that. So it's more about figuring out, hey, what are my next steps? How can I prepare for graduation? How can I pay for the next semester, right? What's happening with my loans? When do I have to pay those back? It's all about preparing for the student life, but also life after you graduate and how all of everything you've done as a student impacts that going forward, because the loans you take out you do have to pay them back, right? They do follow you around. Another tool that's really great for everyone is planning for Social Security. If you don't know what Social Security is, please check this out because it's going to apply to pretty much everyone. Right? If you're planning on retiring, if you're planning to live beyond 62, right, when you can claim Social Security, it's very important. Or if you have a spouse, they can claim your Social Security as well. So it's very important that you really dig into and understand Social Security because it's going to have long-lasting impacts once you do retire and once you reach retirement age. So check out this place here. You can figure out, hey, how much Social Security can I get once I reach retirement? But always check out ssa.gov, which is another great resource from the government to help you figure out where you might be when it comes to Social Security. Now, the last tool here is really powerful, and I would say don't abuse it because it's something that the government created to sort of help you and protect you. So you'll see on the site that there's a bunch of buttons where you can sort of just submit a complaint. Right? And who are you submitting a complaint to? Well, you're actually submitting a complaint to the CFPB, and you can complain about any financial product or any financial company that's not serving your interest or is treating you unfairly. And then the CFPB will investigate the issue and help you resolve it. It's a great tool, and no company wants to go through the CFPB regulations and being examined. If you don't want to file the complaint yet, maybe when you're talking to customer service, you can say, hey, I'm having this issue, it's unfair, and I think I'm going to file a complaint with the CFPB. Is there any way that you can resolve it before I go that route? Hopefully that will force them to really fix the issue before it gets to that point. But if it does get to that point, it's fine. You can just file a complaint and go from there. Now, the interesting thing is that CFPB actually compiles a bunch of data sets. The data sets give you an idea about where you might be when it comes to comparing yourself either to the average or the median American, but also it'll give you an idea about the complaints that have been filed. Right? You can see who has the most complaints when it comes to a financial company. Do you want to work with that financial company if they have so many complaints? It's a good place to find out, what do other people think? Or have they filed a lot of complaints, and for what issues? And does that issue concern you? So this is a great tool to figure out before you try out a new financial product or a new financial platform, what issues they might have, and just be prepared for that. Obviously, the larger the company is, the chances are it's going to have more issues because they have more customers. But still, it'll give you a better idea about what you're getting yourself into. The CFPB is one of my favorite sites to learn and really dig into details when it comes to personal finance and what the government really tries to encourage you to do when it comes to financial education. So a little bonus: if you are a teacher, it does provide a bunch of worksheets, a bunch of information to teach students about personal finance. I'm probably gonna post this video around Christmas time or before Christmas. So Merry Christmas.